On this Saturday night, all eyes on Disney.
This is North Korea type crap that they're doing.
The American media giant's decision to yank Jimmy Kimmel sparks calls for a boycott, with a Canadian Disney star leading the charge. Aerial attack.
And it was a very clear provocation.
Russia's deadly missile and drone rampage. Signs of an emboldened Vladimir Putin.
Could be big trouble.
Military maneuvers, the war games taking place to strategize in the event of an attack or major disruption. And paying tribute to a Canadian World War II hero.
He had a flame inside of him that just wanted peace.
The honor bestowed on a one-eyed infantryman credited with liberating a Dutch city.
Global National, reporting tonight, Ann Gaviola.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Jimmy Kimmel's future at ABC remains uncertain tonight as negotiations reportedly continue with parent company Disney over whether his late-night show will return. The network pulled Jimmy Kimmel Live off the air after his monologue about the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, a move sparking protests, celebrity boycotts, and accusations of government pressure on free speech. Now, even some notable Republicans are criticizing the threat to network broadcast licenses. Candace Cole has tonight's top story.
Protests continue outside Disney following Wednesday's indefinite suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live after the comedian and late-night host made these comments regarding conservative activist Charlie Kirk's alleged killer.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them.
Now, Canada's Tatiana Maslany, star of Marvel's She-Hulk Attorney at Law, which airs on Disney+, is calling for people to drop their subscriptions to the streaming service in protest over Kimmel's suspension, with many others following suit.
Jimmy pushes boundaries. All the late-night hosts do because it's their job.
Comedian Kathy Griffin, who had her own run-in with cancel culture during President Trump's first term over a photo she posted of herself holding a bloodied mask resembling Trump's head, says now is the time for everyone to stand behind Kimmel for the sake of protecting free speech.
When I say that people should be vocal, I think that means everything from writing old-fashioned letters to these entities, calling them, in-person protests.
Trump, who praised Kimmel's suspension, has called on NBC to do the same with Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers' late-night shows.
They'll take a great story and they'll make it bad.
He's also threatened the broadcast licenses of networks that air critical coverage of him, something the Federal Communications Commission chair is on board with, even though the agency is barred from doing so.
This is North Korea type crap that they're doing.
Along with Democratic politicians speaking out against Trump's actions, widely seen as authoritarian, members of his own party are criticizing this latest threat against First Amendment rights in the U.S.
That's right out of Goodfellas. That's right out of a mafioso coming into a bar going, "Nice bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it."
Disney stock reportedly dropped almost 2% following Kimmel's suspension. Candace Cole, Global News, Washington.
A major cyber attack caused chaos at several of Europe's busiest airports, targeting check-in and boarding systems. The Friday night attack meant that only manual check-ins were possible at major hubs like Brussels, Berlin, and London's Heathrow. Collins Aerospace, which provides check-in and boarding systems, cited a cyber-related disruption at select airports. Heathrow says the disruption was minimal, with no cancellations directly linked to the cyber attack, while in Brussels, nearly 30 flights were impacted by mid-morning.
I heard the announcement that there was some trouble because of a cyber attack. So I already knew there would be probably some delays. We were not informed yet about how much delay there would be, but in the meantime, I've now heard that it will be about 3 hours.
Authorities have not identified the cause of the breach. Russia launched another deadly aerial assault on Ukraine overnight. Hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles hit 9 Ukrainian regions, including near the Polish border, forcing Poland to deploy fighter jets to protect its airspace. Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, accused Western allies of wasting time in the push for peace. He is expected to urge U.S. President Donald Trump to impose greater sanctions on Moscow when they meet next week at the United Nations in New York. Mackenzie Gray reports.
It's the latest in a series of major drone and missile attacks from Russia, this time hitting the eastern Ukrainian city of Dnipro. In the capital of Kyiv, Russian drones hit this apartment building. An experienced resident, Yulia Kristokletova, has already gone through. This is the second time my house has been hit. The first time was a rocket, this time a drone. My child couldn't sleep for 6 months after that. It caused me huge problems. I'm still shaking now and can't calm down. Russia fired 40 missiles and roughly 580 drones at Ukraine, killing at least 3 and injuring dozens, according to the Ukrainian president. As Moscow ramps up their war in Ukraine, drones and aircraft have repeatedly entered NATO country airspace. The latest, Estonia.
We can say that at least some of the flight path was intentional, and they must have known that they were in Estonian airspace.
Russia has denied the claim, but the Swedish military posted this photo of the Russian MiG-31 after it left Estonian airspace.
This was a very serious violation of the NATO airspace. We are talking about 12 minutes of violation.
There have been multiple Russian drone and aircraft incursions into NATO airspace recently, leading France to station jets in Poland. We just had 19 Russian drones enter their airspace last week.
We are ready 24/7 to take off on demand. The demand comes from the chain of command of the NATO, and we are able, when necessary, to take off and be ready for any mission.
Russia's testing of NATO boundaries has European leaders on edge, but Donald Trump seems to be less concerned.
I don't love it. I don't love it. I don't love it when that happens. It could be big trouble, but I'll let you know later.
Trump is expected to meet with Volodymyr Zelenskyy next week at the United Nations General Assembly, and the Prime Minister will as well. With the senior government official telling Global News, Mark Carney and Zelenskyy will co-host a meeting on Russia kidnapping thousands of Ukrainian children, and an issue Canada believes progress can be made on thanks to Melania Trump, who's shown interest after writing a letter to Vladimir Putin on the issue.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. Nearly 50 Palestinians were reportedly killed today in Israeli attacks across Gaza. Most of the casualties are in Gaza City, where health officials say homes, schools, and shelters were hit. Israeli forces again dropped leaflets urging residents to evacuate south, as aid agencies warn conditions are worsening. The latest bloodshed comes as Portugal announces it will formally recognize a Palestinian state this weekend, joining a growing list of Western nations, including Canada, who are expected to do so in the coming days. At least 70 people died in a paramilitary drone strike that destroyed a mosque in Sudan's besieged city of El-Fasher. The attack took place Friday and is the largest atrocity reported in a country plagued by more than 2.5 years of war. The United Nations says levels of violence against civilians in Sudan is only getting worse, with more than 3,000 killings in the first half of this year alone. As Redmond Shannon reports, the real toll is likely higher.
Al-Rashid's family members weren't sure they'd ever see him again. I lost my sister, the mother of these children, in an attack on El-Fasher, he says, after fleeing the city. On Friday, a drone attack at a mosque in El-Fasher killed dozens of worshippers. It is the last city in the Darfur region held by Sudan's army in the civil war. El-Fasher has been under siege from the opposing RSF, or Rapid Support Forces, for 18 months. Satellite images from this week, analysed by a team at Yale University, appear to show buildings burned down in areas of El-Fasher as the RSF advances. The United Nations says the more than 250,000 people trapped face an impossible choice.
Stay in El-Fasher and risk bombardment, starvation and atrocities if the RSF overrun the city, or flee and face the risk of summary execution, sexual violence and abduction.
A new UN report says civilian deaths in the war are only increasing, mostly from violence, but also from hunger and disease, with people forced to eat whatever they can. This woman who fled El-Fasher says her family ate cow feed just to survive.
The medical situation, food security and water and sanitation again is very, very bad, and maybe the worst in the whole world.
Dr. Ibrahim Osman coordinates with medical workers on the ground in El-Fasher. He says the world has to do more.
By lifting all barriers that prevent access of medicine, access of food, and also the safe corridors for people who are trying to leave.
Regional experts say the war could stop if the countries funding both sides cut off their support. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Tens of thousands of people took part in marches across the country, including Toronto, calling for climate action and justice.
Humanity is unequivocally facing a climate emergency. And what we're here to say...
David Suzuki also joining the fight in what organizers say is a march against Prime Minister Mark Carney's attacks on climate, Indigenous peoples, migrants and workers during a time of crisis. The march comes ahead of the federal government's fall budget on November 4th. The Prime Minister's office did not return our request for comment. Coming up, the tapping of the keg kicks off the world's largest beer festival, Oktoberfest, in Munich. Plus, tech companies and foreign governments scramble after Trump slaps a $100,000 annual fee on H-1B visas for high-skilled workers. The Trump administration is ramping up its crackdown on immigration. U.S. employers will now have to pay a $100,000 annual fee to hire skilled foreign workers.
If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs.
That's such a good job.
The American president signed an executive order Friday to make the changes to the H-1B visa program, which tech companies rely on heavily. The order comes into effect tomorrow. How far can the president go when it comes to his tariff agenda? Well, that decision is now in the hands of the U.S. Supreme Court. Reggie Cecchini is in Washington, where the Trump administration is trying to persuade the court to keep it all in place. Reggie?
And the U.S. government laid out an argument that Donald Trump has been making since Inauguration Day, that without tariffs, the U.S. economy will face catastrophe. The 49-page brief submitted just before deadline on Friday hits back at various challenges that have been made by small businesses and several states that claim the tariff policy itself is the economic harm Trump is worried about.
There is just a general consciousness around prices are going to rise, or I'm holding my breath waiting to see if prices are going to rise.
The top government lawyer sought to justify the use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to place levies on Canada, Mexico and China over fentanyl, saying it's a way to regulate imports. And even if the word tariff isn't in the law, that shouldn't matter. And on broad tariffs impacting every other country, the White House claims trade deficits constitute a national emergency. Lower courts have already ruled that this is presidential overstep.
We're making it the golden age. Without the tariffs, it would be impossible.
Now, Trump's policy has led some countries, including Canada, to strengthen ties with other allies on concern the U.S. is simply too volatile. Arguments in this case are set to be heard November 5th, and a ruling could come by year's end, though it won't impact sectoral tariffs like aluminum and steel, which are issued on national security grounds that the president has more broad authority over. But a ruling against Trump could jeopardize framework deals that were agreed to with some countries, and the Treasury Secretary has already stated if the administration loses, billions of dollars in refunds might be required.
Reggie Cecchini in Washington. Thank you. A liquefied natural gas mega project topped the Prime Minister's list of major infrastructure projects he wants fast-tracked as part of his nation-building plan. While the focus has been on LNG facilities in British Columbia, one energy company is trying to make a go on the opposite side of the country. Firmuse Energy has announced plans for a project off the coast of Newfoundland. The CEO of Firmuse joins the West Block this week to explain why he feels it's well worth a shot.
It really seems when it comes to LNG, it's a tale of two coasts, right? You've got shipping of LNG from BC. It's already started. But no LNG projects in Newfoundland have ever made it further than the proposal stage. Why do you believe yours will be the one to buck that trend?
A few different key differentiations. Number one is, I think, Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, which is where most of the projects have been proposed in the past. I think it's the supply of gas. So the quantity of gas that is available in Newfoundland, we feel, is a lot more secure. And because the fields are growing, and Equinor is bringing in Bay du Nord, and Cenovus is expanding its West White Rose field, I think there will be more gas than what is available today.
And you can watch the entire interview with Swapan Kataria and interim host Ben Mulrooney tomorrow morning on the West Block right here on Global. Ahead, preparing for conflicts and attacks on Canadian interests with simulations. A behind-the-scenes look at war games. Russia's repeated violations of NATO airspace in recent weeks has the alliance looking towards the Arctic. But how would Canada respond if our northern sovereignty was violated? Officers from the Canadian Forces College, along with retired and non-military members, are testing out war games and will present their findings to politicians. Nathaniel Dove has more on how one hypothetical scenario could play out.
The security of Canada's Arctic is very important at the moment.
It's a challenge Canada faces and one for which we may not be ready.
Yes, you can use stealth.
These war games can help find the problems. The different pieces represent military assets, Russian bombers and Canadian fighter jets.
There are also Russian drones.
The game's designer and referee is General Dennis Thompson.
The idea behind this war game is to give people a perception, or at least an idea, of how vast the territory is and how difficult it would be to assert our sovereignty over the entire region.
In this hypothetical scenario, turmoil in the Middle East and Europe disrupted natural gas supplies, so a tanker convoy needs to get through the Northwest Passage. As the ice continues to recede, the passage in Canadian waters, though some countries dispute that, could become a busy route.
We've got to figure out well in advance how we're going to defend it.
Russia has been heavily building its Arctic forces.
By holding Mold Bay, they can deny the Canadians access to the Northwest Passage.
Today, it wants to stop the convoy, landing missile batteries on Canadian soil.
If you destroy the logistics, you won't be able to survive up there. You will not have the food, fuel, ammunition, infrastructure to survive in the Arctic for very long.
A former Canadian intelligence officer plays the part of the Kremlin. In recent weeks, Russia has violated NATO's eastern flank many times, but it's pressured the northern flank for years.
We're always doing provocations. We like to provoke constantly.
Russia's being aggressive, but they have a lot of assets, so they have a lot of different options to play the game. So it's challenging. We're having to think 4 or 5 steps ahead.
One lesson learned: infrastructure. Only a few runways are paved, meaning warplanes don't have many places to land. The overall lesson, though, we must prepare.
That's frustrated knowing how little assets Canada has.
In this scenario, Canada won, but only because the U.S. forced the Russians off Canadian soil. Nathaniel Dove, Global News.
Some called him the Rambo of Quebec, a new honor for one of Canada's great war heroes. That's next.
Responsible for the sea.
The largest beer festival in the world has opened for the 190th time. Oktoberfest kicked off in Munich as its mayor performed the tapping of the first keg. Now, this festival has its origins in a horse race that took place in 1810 to celebrate the wedding of a Bavarian royal. The event draws millions of visitors, and this year, Sticker Shock is on tap with the highest beer prices ever. A Montreal suburb has a new street name. It honors a Canadian soldier known for being a modest hero. Felicia Perillo has more on the tribute to El-Fasher.
It doesn't look like much now, but once complete, this stretch of gravel will stand as a tribute to one of Quebec's greatest war heroes. Steps away from the St. Anne's Hospital, formerly known as the Veterans Hospital, elected officials and community members gathered to unveil the new street name, El-Fasher.
when the veterans or the soldiers used to come back across the pond if they were hurt. This was their first stop on Canadian soil. So that's what we thought. It would make perfect sense to name that one street through this new little seniors village after a war hero.
Major is best known for a story that's almost too remarkable to be true. In 1945, he single-handedly liberated the Dutch town of Zwolle from the Nazis. He then went on to serve in the Korean War. He's the only Canadian to receive a Distinguished Conduct Medal in 2 wars.
This is a guy that I would say that if he was British or American, there would be songs about him, there would be movies, there would be dozens of biographies, and everybody would know his story, but he's Canadian, and we seem to be too humble to celebrate our heroes, to honor them.
After his storied career in the military, Major faced the lingering effects of battle and received care at the hospital that now stands next to his namesake street.
He had a flame inside of him that just wanted peace, and it was not about killing people or doing the war. It was about defending people and be like, no, this is not the way it has to happen. There's another way.
For his family, the city, and his fellow veterans, the street is more than a marker on a map. It's a reminder of the sacrifices one made for freedom and the legacy he leaves behind. Felicia Perillo, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Anne Gaviola. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Arnold's Cove, Newfoundland and Labrador, Peterborough, Ontario, and a farm near Warwick, Alberta. We love it when you share your Canada. Please email your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thank you for watching. I hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.